All right, let's talk about it. 49ers lose to the Cardinals 24-23. They smoke another 10-point fourth quarter lead against an inferior division team. Although I say inferior, I'm not quite sure that's correct. The Niners aren't very good right now, man. That was the takeaway for me today.
Yeah, it was definitely. I think so many different things are going on. I tried not to do the thing where I draw a sweeping conclusion off of one loss, but we've had enough of a sample size now with 3 losses against NFC teams. The loss to the Vikings is looking kind of better as time goes on. Like, it looks like the Vikings are the class of the conference right now. But this one was troubling for a few different reasons. I don't really know where to start because it was another one where it was like the offense and defense were both pretty problematic at different points of the game. So what I'm confused about, which I guess is a place to start, like, this offense looks entirely different from a schematic standpoint.
Yeah, it's weird.
I'm not gonna pretend like I'm an X's and O's guru, but anybody who's watched the 49ers offense since Kyle Shanahan became head coach knows what it looks like. There's a ton of play action. There's a ton of stuff under center. There are plays off of each other, right? There's sequencing. There's a rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
The 49ers now all of a sudden are super reliant on the drop back game in a way that I don't think I've ever seen under Kyle Shanahan. Mm-hmm. And I think that's problematic in the sense that it's not their strength, right? I don't think it's Kyle Shanahan's strength to be dialing up offenses based solely off, a bunch of different route concepts where you're not incorporating play action nearly as much, where the running game isn't tied into the passing game like we're used to seeing. I don't think many players on the offense are used to it. Like, I think it's an odd choice, but if you were to tell me, okay, if you do this during the regular season, maybe you're better in third downs in playoff games or whatever. Because if you come away from the Super Bowl, you remember, like, the takeaway was you got to be better on third down, third and long, right? Third and mid, third and long. Maybe you try to go drop back game heavy in the regular season to prepare for that. The problem is, of course, is you're losing games. And there doesn't seem to be any rhythm offensively. The Cardinals were not a good run defense coming in, and the 49ers didn't run the ball at all early. It was a ton of pass plays,
weird,
right?
So freaking weird.
Third down in the first half near the goal line, third and short, and they go empty with 3 receivers wide, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think the Niners offensive line is as good as a run blocking unit as we're used to seeing. But I still think it's just out of character. Like, I talked about it last week. It's just like the Niners offense is sort of bizarro offense right now. And it doesn't make sense to me why Kyle Shanahan is doing it that way. I think it's hurting them in the red zone along with Christian McCaffrey's absence. Mm-hmm. And that to me is sort of where I want to start, because the offense just seems completely out of rhythm right now. And even though they could move the ball, it just never felt like the offense found its footing. And obviously that doesn't help when, Brock Purdy's getting hit as he's throwing, or Jordan Mason is fumbling the ball in the red zone near the goal line. The turnovers were, to me, the turnovers and the red zone issues, 1 of 6 in the red zone, 3 turnovers. That's 1A and 1B. And I'm not really into ordering which one's which, but those are the 2 biggest issues for the offense. But overall, it just seems very disjointed, and it's hard to figure out.
I'll rank them. The red zone offense stuff is far and away the biggest problem to me. It reared its head badly today. Forget how they had to play after the Jake Moody injury, right? Like, I genuinely think if Jake Moody's healthy, the 49ers win that game. They have probably 6 additional points at least. And the 49ers were 1 for 6 in the red zone today, 1 for 5 in goal to go situations. They are now at 40.9% in the red zone for the year. And for context, that would have been 31st in the league last year, ahead of only the Zach Wilson Jets. That's how bad they are in the red zone right now. And I know we always joke about the term inexcusable. Like people say stuff in sports is inexcusable. That's perfectly excusable. He missed that corner three, inexcusable. Like, nah, you're going to miss a lot of those. Even the best shooters, you're going to miss 6 out of 10, right? So it's inexcusable for a team with Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and Jordan Mason being as good as he's been, and Kyle Juszczyk and Brandon Ayuk and Brock Purdy with Kyle Shanahan calling the plays. It is inexcusable for them to be at 40.9% in the red zone. That makes, and this is not 1 week. This is 5 weeks of this. And I get, we've talked about this a little bit on the pod, right? The Jerick McKinnon injury, Jesus. I've been calling him by his unfortunate nickname for so long that I forgot his name. Jerick McKinnon, the injury the week before the 2018 season started, right? It derailed what they were going to do offensively. He was going to be the focal point of the offense the same way Christian McCaffrey is, right? He gets hurt the Saturday before the season starts, derails everything they're going to do. And then the Jimmy Garoppolo injury happens and the season was over, right? But you saw the first couple of weeks against Minnesota and against the Lions, the Niners offense just looked disjointed and bad. Certainly worse than it had with Jimmy Garoppolo in the 5 weeks to close the 2017 season. This isn't that, though. Christian McCaffrey being out was not sprung on them. They knew he was dealing with Achilles tendonitis all training camp. They had to run an offense all training camp and all through the preseason. And then he goes on IR in week 2, and they've now had 4 weeks to figure this out. And they still have come up with nothing? That's the baffling thing to me. That's where I don't know if they're trying to not make wholesale changes because they're expecting McCaffrey back, and so they're just going to kind of live with it for now. But at some point, this 40.9% in the red zone is not going to make the playoffs, much less win a championship. And this isn't even, like you said, there are so many more issues than this, but this is just the top one if we're ranking the things wrong with the 49ers right now. First and goal at the 8 against this Cardinals defense, and you go run to Isaac Guerrero, pass, 20-yard field goal. Like that is like, what is this? Brock Purdy was talking after the game about the Niners not knowing their identity. Like, why not? Seems pretty straightforward to me. They've bounced for no reason. I am without answers for why. I agree with everything you said about what their offense looks like. I don't know why they did that. I do not understand it in the slightest. And you can't tell me it's because Christian McCaffrey can be a slot receiver and Jordan Mason can't. There's just no way that the 49ers' entire offensive success hinges on that person's skill set. No chance.
Right. And I think what was said, there were a few things said post-game by the players that I thought stood out for sure. The biggest one was probably a couple different guys talked about it, including Brock Purdy, saying, we don't have an identity yet. It's like, man, for a team that's been together this long with this coaching staff and this core group of players, I know we're only in the second full season of Brock Purdy, but it's essentially his third season, right? For them to feel like they don't have an identity brings me back to the whole schematic thing with what Kyle Shanahan's doing. Because if they came into the season with the same sort of offensive game plan, and look, obviously it's going to be different year to year, defenses evolve, and I do think there's certainly an element of, or evolve, sorry. I certainly think there's an element of defenses plugging the middle of the field and trying to take away all those crossers that the 49ers had so much success with last year, right? Like, I think that's a real part of this. But why is play action suddenly not something you're doing?
It's so
right.
strange.
Why is the downhill running game, the outside zone, all the staples that we're used to, why is that gone away now? I would love, Kyle Shanahan will never talk about scheme in the media. Maybe we'll have to wait till after the season. But I would love to know why this is an evolution he's trying to force on the offense right now when it doesn't really fit the skill set of his players. Because now, like, with where George Kittle's at in his career, and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk obviously can still separate, and Juwan Jennings can still separate. You don't have a running back who can separate like Christian McCaffrey, obviously. The drop back passing game is predicated on having really good route runners who can separate. And Deebo Samuel and George Kittle just aren't those guys right now.
Yep.
So that's why I don't understand this schematic shift to the traditional drop back game, because it's not like you have a ton of separators. You have guys who are versatile and multi-dimensional, which are huge pluses when you're doing play action and misdirection and a lot of those things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, the thing I'll always go back to is that Raiders preseason game, 4 years ago, whenever it was, you had Jalen Hurd running one direction, you had Trey Lance doing play action somewhere, and then like zone read, whatever. You had guys going all different directions, right? And that feels like it's impossible to defend because, hey, maybe you do give it to Deebo Samuel in jet motion, right? And defenses are terrified of that. Maybe you do give it to your running back who, Jordan Mason had a bad fumble today and the running game wasn't as effective as it's been, but he's still been one of the better, more productive running backs in the league so far. Like, there's so many different things you can do schematically to stress defenses that I feel like with this personnel, you're doing defenses a favor by just lining up and doing a traditional drop back game, because that doesn't take advantage of their skill sets. So that to me falls on Kyle Shanahan. And I think it's reinforced by the idea that this team doesn't have an identity.
Yep.
These guys saying we don't have an identity is like, what kind of offense are we running? Like, what is our identity? Like, are we a play action Kyle Shanahan offense team, or are we now a drop back team? There's sort of this weird feeling of being in flux when you hear these guys talk about it. And it's like, man, this is weird.
Yes.
And so, and it started out weird, right? It was 3 and out to start, and it's Brock Purdy throwing inaccurate passes outside the numbers on the sideline.
Yeah, and the same throw twice.
And I get you're trying to adjust to what defenses are doing, because I'm sure defenses are plugging the middle of the field. But like, it's just such a weird thing. Like, play to your strengths. Like, what your strengths are, and you're kind of running out of time early in the season to be going through an offensive evolution when you're 0-3 in the conference and 0-2 in the division. Like, the Niners needed to win Sunday because they have that short turnaround going up to Seattle.
Yes. And I feel like if defenses are plugging the middle of the field, wouldn't a good way to move people around is play action? I was just looking this up. In 2022, granted, again, remember that's the truncated year because Purdy didn't get in until week 12. 26.6% of his dropbacks were play action, according to Pro Football Focus. In 2023, that number dipped to 23%. This year, he's at 15.8% going into today. The stats haven't been updated for today. But 15.8%, that is second to last in the league behind Kirk Cousins, who's 38 and coming off a torn Achilles. So I don't know what the deal is. But I refuse to believe that it's solely because of Christian McCaffrey.
Right. I agree with that.
I don't know if Brock just doesn't like doing it, or if Shanahan doesn't think the offensive line can hold up long enough to run a play action. I have just no clue. But it is baffling, and it doesn't seem to be helping.
Kyle Shanahan, throughout his entire coaching life, has been a run-first play caller.
Yes.
It's like flat out. He's like, you could take anything to the bank. It's like Kyle Shanahan is going to be a run-heavy offensive coordinator. And he's moved away from that. And I don't think it's coincidental that the offense is kind of sputtering and you have players talking about losing, like not having an identity.
I would agree.
So we'll see how that evolves. On the other hand, like, as troubling as all this stuff is, Niners were 3-5 in 2021 and 3-4 in 2022 and still went to the NFC title game. Not that I necessarily like. There's some.
This
worse
team
signs,
is so much worse than those.
Yeah. So and we can talk about that too. But I just like, if you get Christian McCaffrey back, if you get Dre Greenlaw back, and we'll talk about the defense, and the 49ers just execute better in November and December like we see them do so often, then maybe they're fine. Because it doesn't really seem like they're, aside from Minnesota, which still feels, it's so wild to say, it's like that the Minnesota Vikings are suddenly like the most elite team in the NFC.
They're awesome.
But aside from them, there's a real vacuum atop the NFC in terms of like the hierarchy. And the good news for the Niners with the Seahawks losing on Sunday to the Giants, which was also wild. I don't know if you caught the end of that game.
Boy, did I.
But if the Niners win Thursday, they're 3-3 and they're in first place in the NFC West. So it's, like it seems really bad right now, but maybe it's not. If they lose on Thursday, then it's like, okay, then it's time to
season's cooked.
Maybe start talking.
If they lose on Thursday, and then you got the Chiefs.
The thing is though, yeah, I mean, if they can lose,
who they haven't beat since 1998 or whatever.
That
was like 2012 or 11,
like
whatever.
What's the 7th seed going to be in the NFC? 9 and 8.
It's not, but it's not. It's not so much like playoffs is not the goal here. Like the goal is to look like a Super Bowl contender, and I just don't know. You said Dre Greenlaw, like that's the answer. Dre Greenlaw coming off an Achilles tear in December or January or whenever he comes back. Like this is just not a good enough team, man. I don't.
Yeah, right now it's not.
I don't know. I don't know. Like, yeah, they might go 10-7 and make the playoffs. Sure. But like when they get there, do you trust them to go on the road and beat any team that's going to win a division?
Who do you trust in the NFC?
Well, good question. Let me look at the standings. No, I want to make sure I have this right. No, I want to make sure I have this right. All right. So, do you trust them to go into Minnesota and win that game?
Minnesota's the only place where I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so.
Okay, but that's a moot point because they wouldn't even go there in the first round if Minnesota is the 1 seed. They'll have a bye. Do you trust them to go hang with Washington? In Washington?
Yes. Yeah.
I do not. Jaden Daniels would tear them apart. Fact. They couldn't stop Kyler Murray, bro. They're going to stop Jaden Daniels?
I mean, we're talking about the playoffs. The playoffs are entirely different.
Okay, yes, 100%. It's totally different, but so is this Niners team. I don't this like team that's just gonna go stifle Aaron Rodgers and hold him to 10 points in Green Bay. This is not that defense. That's kind of the biggest problem. Just as we shift gears to a different problem, I don't know what they're gonna do defensively. They're so bad on that side of the ball. And if it's not Fred Warner or Nick Bosa coming up with miraculous turnovers, they have nothing. They have nothing on that side of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see more. Obviously, today was not encouraging. The fact that they couldn't tackle James Conner in the second half, obviously, super problematic. But again, like we're talking about October 6th. So I'm obviously concerned, and I think the defense is really problematic. And I think we're already at a place where, talking about the identity crisis of the offense, I think you can make a similar case for the defense.
Yeah.
Because this is not the same front four, right? This is not the same front four that John Lynch always talked about, where we're going to dominate up front and be built front to back and everything like that. I think, I need to offer a mea culpa on Jair Brown. I came into the season thinking Jair Brown was going to take a next step and potentially be that next 49ers Pro Bowler on defense.
He's right there with you.
Are not signs of that happening. He's taking bad angles. He's missing tackles. He's not. I don't know that he's necessarily a liability in coverage, but he doesn't seem like he's a plus in coverage, and he's certainly not the fastest safety in the league.
Not generating turnovers. That the missed tackle on James Conner in the backfield today on that screen was just. I mean, dude,
Yeah.
Gotta make that play.
That was rough. Like, you've had rough moments from him. You've had rough moments from Isaac Yiadom. Yiadom was a little bit better today. But just overall in the season, Isaac Yiadom hasn't been as good as they hoped. And obviously Devondre Campbell, I think we were right about that. When we went to training camp in August, we thought it was a little bit weird that Nick Sorensen was just handing Devondre Campbell the starting job when it's pretty clear that he's not the same player who was an All-Pro a couple years ago. So I don't know, there doesn't seem to be like the Dre Greenlaw coming back and playing at a Pro Bowl level is not something that should be expected.
Nope.
I also don't know that Dre Greenlaw coming back is not going to solve their pass rush issue. And I thought, Leonard Floyd was a little bit more prevalent today, but also on the fourth down that Kyler Murray completed to Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, Leonard Floyd is 1.5 feet taller than Kyler Murray, and like had his hands low and is kind of like falling forwards, and Kyler Murray is still able to get the pass over him. There's no way Kyler completes that pass if Leonard Floyd and his super long arms are straight up in the air and he's vertical. He knocks that pass down easy. And I don't know if it's because he lost his balance or what, but it was like, and it's just kind of emblematic of like, all right, this is not the same team where, 2019, 3rd and long, you knew the quarterback was going to get pressured.
Yep.
It was a wrap. Like, if it's 3rd and 11 and it's DeForest Buckner, D Ford, Eric Armstead, and Nick Bosa, like, it's a wrap. It's going to be a sack. It's going to be a turnover. It's going to be a forced incompletion. It's not going to be a good play. That was a given. And that's what this 49ers defense needs to be. I think it, like, I tweeted this out today, like, today should serve as a reminder of how good Eric Armstead was, because I think he was with the Niners for so long and just kind of on the field so often that how good he was against the run was like kind of slipped through the cracks in terms of like the way he was talked about. He had that one double-digit sack season in 2019, but he was always really, really good against the run.
Yep.
And today it was like they could not stop a running play if their life depended on it in the second half. And as a defense, you talk to any player in the NFL, any defensive player in the NFL, if you can't stop the run, you really can't do anything. Like, that's the first thing that they talk about. It's like, we have to stop the run. Because if you can't do that, play action is going to work. Running game is obviously going to work. They're going to be ahead of the sticks the whole game. Third, it's going to be impossible to get off the field on 3rd down. Like, that is where you have to start. And the 49ers can't stop the run right now, even with the best linebacker in football. They couldn't do it. And so that's pretty problematic.
13 carries for 77 yards in the second half today for James Conner. And for the game, he was at 19 for 86 with a long run of 14. It was just a consistent just bludgeoning, and they had nothing.
Yeah.
Like, at no point when Jordan Mason fumbled, it was just at the end of the game. It was like, this is over. There's zero chance they're getting a stop. And lo and behold, game-winning field goal. And just, it's ugly, man. There's
the one time the Niners get a special teams touchdown, the rest of the things falter.
Do you remember the last game they had the blocked field goal for a touchdown?
I don't.
It was the game in Minnesota where Brett Favre threw that like miracle TD over Shante Spencer when his time expired.
Oh, sure.
That was that game.
I do remember that.
Yeah.
I was in Columbus, Ohio, watching that game.
0-2 in the last 2 games where they blocked a field goal and returned it for a touchdown. Maybe they should stop doing that. Hey, I don't know how I want to say this because I don't want to sound alarmist.
You?
I know. I really carved out this niche of being like a really even kilter guy. And so I just want to make sure I'm holding that up. Deebo Samuel, 4 touches for 20 yards today. 19 completions for Brock Purdy, 16 of them to Brandon Ayuk and George Kittle. I did not think Brock was very good today, but we can talk about that in a second. 3 targets for Do you think we're going to find out tomorrow on Kyle Shanahan's conference call that Deebo's banged up? Like, would it shock you at all if he's like, yeah, he's dealing with a shoulder or whatever?
He came back last week early from the calf injury.
Right. And then today it looked early on. So I talked about it last week on the pod, how I loved the idea of running more 11 personnel, but like with Deebo as a running back. And it looked like they were going to do that early on. They did it a couple of times and they got Deebo involved in the run game. And then it just stopped. And then he was just a non-factor. And given Purdy's reliance on him, particularly in like under pressure situations, I thought that was really odd today. That with so many big spots and so many downs where it's like, man, they got to have this one. The Deebo got nothing. That was really, really strange. And that's a guy that over the last couple of years has been, hey, this offense needs a spark. Get it to Deebo and let him do something with the ball in his hands. And that just...
I think it was the second drive they ran a tunnel screen to him, and it worked.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't try it again. So, yeah I mean, it just... It was weird, man. Like, didn't feel like Kyle Juszczyk was really on the field all that much. It just doesn't feel like the strength of Kyle Shanahan as a play caller, and I don't want to keep harping on this, is not his passing game. It's not. It's not like have 5 eligibles and be in shotgun and do a 7-step drop, 5-step drop. That is not Kyle Shanahan's strength as an offensive play caller. And why he's leaning so heavily into that and not taking advantage of what Deebo Samuel brings you as a quote-unquote gadget player, or not taking advantage of what Kyle Juszczyk does in terms of his ability to dictate to defenses years ago, I think it was a 2019 owners meetings. I was there. It was that breakfast where it's super early. Everyone's really hungover and Kyle Shanahan's doing the interviews, right? And I talked to him about fullbacks. And I think I've mentioned it on the show over the years, but like I asked him about the importance of a fullback and why he still leans into it so much. And his answer was like 5 minutes. And it was about how having a versatile fullback dictates things to defenses rather than the defense dictating things to you. And, and we've seen that sort of in spades, right? Like Kyle Juszczyk can be in line as a tight end. He can line up in the slot. He can be in motion. He can shift. He can do all of these things that allow you to create mismatches. But when you're just kind of lining up in shotgun and 11 personnel and trying to pat, you're taking all of that away. And that's been a really core tenet of what Kyle Shanahan does. And I get you want Brock Purdy to evolve as this do everything pocket passer, but it's I feel like you can do both.
Should be able to.
You can have that downfield passing game when you need it. And you can have all those long developing plays when you need them. But where are the quick hitters? Where's the misdirection stuff? Where's the stuff where you have defense on their heels? And where's the stuff where you're setting up plays for later in the game based on certain looks you use early in the game? So and Deebo Samuel is kind of the same thing. That's Deebo's, you can call it gadget plays, you can call them designer plays, whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
To maximize your receiver who you're paying $26 million a year, or whatever it is. You need to figure out ways to get the ball in his hands beyond just hey, go run a 15-yard out route and a bunch of post routes and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So
it doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't. The lack of play action and, it's odd. And the 49ers were up for the majority of the game and still had 10 more pass plays and run plays.
So they had,
I guess not including Purdy's scrambles.
Yeah, so Purdy had 39 dropbacks compared to 22 designed runs in a game where they led by 10 at halftime. I do not understand it. And I'm not.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I'm not here for the well. They were loading the box, and so we're gonna try and throw against their run looks. Like the Niners were loading the box too, and the Cardinals just kept running. That's legal. You're allowed to do that. You're allowed to just give it to your running back who breaks a bunch of tackles and creates a bunch of yards and just let him rip. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
I would love to, like you said, Kyle Shanahan would never do this, but I would love to sit down in a room with him and just watch the game and be like, I would love to have you explain your thought process on this particular play and just pick out half a dozen plays.
And it would be one thing if you didn't have a really good downhill running back, right?
Yeah.
Like Jordan Mason is like one of the top rushers in the league statistically right now. And people are calling him like, oh, he runs like Marshawn Lynch and he's leading the league in broken tackles and all of that. It's like, then lean into that. Like you have that, lean in. So that's odd. That's definitely
really
odd. We've
Brandon,
been
are you
kind of jumping around.
Proof of life today?
He's back.
Great.
He's back.
Right. Moving on.
Really good game. I mean, it just reinforces
go ahead.
It reinforces the idea that trading Brandon Ayuk after 4 games was a stupid idea.
I feel bad that he finally has a good game, and it's just like bottom of the list of shit that matters. Like, nice, dude. Awesome. He had 167 yards coming in today. He had 147 yards just today.
And good I think player. Over 100 at halftime.
Yeah, 108 in the first half. And good player.
Like I mentioned it last week, like you could see, again, I wasn't like at the entirety of practice, and I've only been to 2 practices this year. But like you could see at practice on Thursday, even when he was just doing individual drills, he was at full speed, like full tilt. While like some of the guys are just kind of like, you know, you're in individual drills before practice starts. Maybe you're going 70, 80%. You're making sure you're doing the right steps, but you're not like approaching it with the same level of intensity. Like Brandon Ayuk clearly was. And there were a couple of the routes that he ran that I saw him run like in the warm-ups on air. And it was like, oh yeah, that's kind of what it looks like. Like he's at game speed in practice. So I thought that was a good sign. So I'm expecting Brandon Ayuk's numbers to be good. But like you mentioned it, like when Brock Purdy's at his best and it feels like the offense is really in rhythm, it's like, all right, 6 targets for Brandon Ayuk, 6 targets for George Kittle, 5 or 6 targets for Debo, depending on how many runs he's getting, you know, like 4 targets for Jennings. It's like Ayuk and Kittle had 24 targets, and then that was 24 of the 35 targets went to those 2 guys.
Just doesn't make any sense.
Just not spreading it around. Just bizarro offense. Like the Niners offense just does not seem anything like itself, and it's weird. And I think it's a reason why they're losing and why players are talking about not knowing what their identity is. Defensively,
so you've got offensive players who don't know what their identity is, and you've got defensive players like, we don't make any adjustments. Cool. This is good.
Like the Nick Sorensen thing I think is real. And I think it's worth noting that Nick Bosa said after the game that, you know, their preparation during the week is really good, but while their preparation during the week is really good, they're getting looks they're not prepared for on Sundays. Nick Bosa essentially said that.
It sounds very Steve Wilkes-ish.
Right. And that's code for our defensive coordinators not doing the best job right now.
Yep.
So I've been of the mind, like during the first month of the season, that like let's wait and see on Nick Sorensen. Like I remember Robert Saleh going through it early in his career, or his tenure as Niners defensive coordinator. I remember DeMeco Ryans not having always dominant defenses, even early on in his tenure. But you know, there are communication issues. You've had multiple, you know, Minnesota, that easy touchdown that they had, there was a communication issue with Jair Brown, right, who is apparently, you know, Nick Sorensen always says is amazing at communicating. You had the communication issue today with him and Charvarius Ward, where they both go cover one guy and leave a guy open in the middle of the field in a crucial play. And I think it was the fourth quarter. Just it's not looking great for Nick Sorensen in the sense that this doesn't look like a unit that is super cohesive and all on the same page and has a clear plan for everything that's happening on the field on Sundays. And it's been the idea that Robert Saleh could be back as a 49ers DC next offseason is not crazy to me. If the Jets keep riding their trajectory and the Niners defense keeps riding its trajectory.
Their trajectory.
Nice.
Yeah, I think the best thing you can do right now if you're a 49er fan is root like hell against the Jets. And hope that Bob Saleh is looking for a DC job next offseason.
Yeah.
Or maybe Nick Sorensen turns it around and figures it out with this group, but
maybe.
This is one of I'm not at all in any respect a fire Kyle Shanahan guy. There are those people, they've been around since they lost the Super Bowl 5 years ago and they just exist, right? And if you're that person, cool. I don't agree with that person or those people. But one of the pretty sizable gripes I have is a little bit of what we've talked about today on both sides of the ball. This like unwillingness to, I don't know if it's unwillingness, but I'm going to say unwillingness for lack of a better word, like adapt on the fly and just kind of change things as necessary. Because there's this belief that like, well, if you just execute properly, it matters less what players you have. And as long as you're executing perfectly, then everything's fine. Like they just give themselves no margin for error, and that already thin margin for error shrinks even more when they have the players that they have on both sides of the ball. And you had a defensive coach. Not that anybody in the building is Bill Belichick, but you have a coach like Bill Belichick, who every week the defense was just different. Like every week they were going to do something different based on what the offense was doing. Andy Reid does different stuff with his offense all the time. Sean McVay has had to adapt and readapt what they're doing offensively a gang of times. And that's one of the things that I feel like Shanahan is trying to do now, only he's doing like I don't understand why. And on the defensive side, it's like you got to be willing to flip the spread and do something different, because like blitzing Jair Brown off the edge isn't clearly working. So I think they're kind of at the point where they're 2-3. Is that the end of the world? No. Can they still make the playoffs? Can they still be the 1 seed? Like, yeah, that path is there. But on the other hand, you're running out of games where you have time to fix something. You can't get to 2-6 and then go, okay, we're going to try something dramatically different. Like, now you need to do that 2 weeks ago.
So I wonder if Kyle Shanahan knew he wasn't going to have his first, second, or reportedly third choice in defensive coordinator if he fires Steve Wilkes after last season, right?
Yeah.
Because it was, the Niners tried to get Jeff Ulbrich from the Jets. They made a call on Steve Spagnuolo before he got re-upped with the Chiefs or extended with the Chiefs, whatever that was. He asked Bill Belichick, right? Reportedly. Mm-hmm. So Nick Sorensen, if all that reporting is correct, Nick Sorensen was number 4 on his list. Is the 4th guy on Kyle Shanahan's list better than Steve Wilkes? Like that's an interesting question to me. Was Vic Fangio on that list? And did Vic Fangio choose the Eagles over the Niners? I tend to think not.
Or was it the bigger problem to me would be if Vic Fangio was not on the list because he doesn't run the very specific defense Kyle Shanahan wants to run.
Yeah, that's fair too.
Overlooking proven defensive coordinators because 4-3 instead. Like, okay.
Yeah, like when Kyle Shanahan had to replace Robert Saleh, like it was very clear D'Amico Ryans was the guy. Like that was like an easy choice, right? It was, yeah, we have this guy. It wasn't so much, let's talk to all these other teams about their pre-existing DCs to see if they'll get
Right.
out of their contract and come to the Niners. It was, oh, there's a guy here that we really, really like. It's like, not like they like Nick Sorensen, but it wasn't like, oh, slam dunk. I saw the comment too, Armando Castellanos.
Yep.
They
You
still
called this
aren't wearing
before
the
the game.
striped socks with the
Yeah.
throwbacks. I literally texted the group chat, said the Niners are going to lose because they're wearing white socks.
Yep. Called it.
The white socks and white pants with the red jerseys is a calamity. It's an abomination.
It's really bad. It is bad. I used to not care that much. Now I care. No, I care as much as you do.
It's like they're wearing white yoga pants. It looks super weird. I get, like, if you want to go all white on the road with the white jerseys, cool. That's fine. White socks with the red jerseys, no, just doesn't work.
Looks really weird.
And you get what you deserve in this sense. An embarrassing loss to a team you should beat.
You know, a good indication of where the 49ers kind of stand right now is I had zero faith that they were winning that game after Jordan Mason fumbled.
I texted you guys during halftime. They were up 13 points, and I was like, this is not trending well.
Yeah.
Niners were allowing 8.6 yards per play to Arizona.
Yeah.
They had a blocked field goal touchdown and then a wild, fluky Nick Bosa interception on a bubble screen that gave them a 13-point lead while being, I think they were 1 of 4 in the red zone. I was like, this could get hairy really quick. I texted that to you guys, and then it's turnover, points, and then they still can't score in the red zone, and then they have a fumble in the red zone. It was just like, all right, it was pretty predictable despite them being up by 13 points at halftime.
I wonder if the 49ers have ever gone 1 for 6 in the red zone.
I mean, 2016 was quite the year.
I don't know if they made 6 trips to the red zone in a game in 2016. So
that's fair. That's fair.
Just for the sake of fairness, because we are a very journalistic institution here at Candlestick Chronicles, Brock Purdy stunk today. I did not think he was good. And so Stephen Ruiz of The Ringer and Shil Kapati of The Ringer got into an argument because Stephen Ruiz said that the 49ers, he had no doubt in his mind that the 49ers would have beat the Vikings had they had Kyler Murray instead of Brock Purdy, which I think is wild to say. But then to have Brock Purdy go out and play like dog shit against Kyler Murray's team was a tough look. That's a tough go for the Brock Purdy is actually good crowd.
What's interesting is before Sunday, all the all the discussion around Brock Purdy was he's a product of the system. He's getting the ball out quickly. He's over-reliant on play action. It's all run first offense. And it's been the exact opposite this year, and Brock Purdy's numbers have still stood up. Mm-hmm. And you've had some smart people notice, like, oh, the Niners offense is very different. It's not just all quick hitters. It's long developing plays. It's Brock Purdy, pushing the ball downfield like all the time, relentlessly. Mm-hmm. And then I think what you got Sunday was all of that kind of coming home to roost in the sense of like, he can do that, but like, how sustainable is it? Like, how sustainable is it when you're pushing the ball that far downfield and not having nearly as many layups baked into the offense?
Right.
Like, how many layup throws did Brock Purdy really have today? Because it felt like
designed layup throws, like none.
Right.
There was the one that he missed to Kittle in the red zone. That felt like a layup throw that he missed. The one
out left where Kittle kind of fell short.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. But like Rustog in the chat on YouTube says any credit to Arizona's defense. Yeah, the Cardinals defense played well.
Did they though?
There's no Brock Purdy was an MVP candidate last year. This is arguably the best set of skill guys in the league. Jordan Mason's been one of their best running backs in football. Like the Arizona Cardinals, who came in ranked, I don't know,
They were way at the
they
were way at the bottom of the league in everything.
Right. The Arizona Cardinals came in, that is a team the Niners offense should handle.
Yes. Yes.
So
I went in thinking this would be the Niners' highest scoring game of the year.
Sure.
Because I thought neither defense would be able to get a stop, and it turns out that the Cardinals defense was able to get plenty of stops.
And yeah, the Cardinals were coming in having gotten embarrassed the previous week by Washington.
Yeah, that's true.
But the other thing too, with the interception at the end of the game, you have these long developing plays. Those long developing plays are easier to blitz, and you can time up the blitzes easier.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that definitely happened on the game sealing interception. So I think we saw with the Falcons early on this season, like Kirk Cousins in week 1, they didn't do like any boot actions or any play action or, anything like that. And then they incorporated that in the offense, and then Kirk Cousins' numbers started to skyrocket again.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's probably time to like get back to the basics and like run the Kyle Shanahan stuff we're used to seeing them run.
Yeah. Wouldn't that be that like a Thursday night, going into a Thursday night game feels like a good time to start doing that?
Yeah.
Like, hey, you know what?
Maybe
this week we're just going to do what we used to do. I don't know.
Maybe
it feels I know it feels like they're making football too hard.
Yeah.
Just keep doing what worked and give the ball to your best dudes and score some points.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is the other thing. Hang on. Another Armando Castellanos in the chat said he missed Kittle at the end when he got hit on the game-ending pick. Yeah, that's what Purdy talked about that after the game, how he was locked in on Brandon Ayuk and just missed George Kittle wide open underneath, who would have been able to catch, run, and get out of bounds. And he didn't miss him because he got hit as he threw. He literally said he wasn't throwing it to him. The pass was intended for Brandon Ayuk. And I don't know if it's the style of offense or if Purdy knows the defense isn't as good and so he feels this need to, it's like, it feels like he's not taking any underneath throws. Like he's not, maybe they're not designed, but it feels like every single throw is 18, 20, 25 yards down the field. And that's nice. Like having that explosive element to the offense is great. But like sometimes on 2nd and 10, taking 6 to get to 3rd and 4 is just the way better football play. Instead of trying to get all 10 yards on one throw.
So this is JT O'Sullivan's thing. He did his Brock Purdy video this week about, Brock's game against the Patriots.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things he mentioned was, and he said it all last year, he was like, man, I really wish Brock Purdy would uncork some of these deeper throws because they're there. They're part of this offense. Like Brock Purdy can hit those. And that's kind of I think that's been in Brock Purdy's head. Not that he like watched JT O'Sullivan's videos and that's like, but it feels like he is consciously being like really, really aggressive in terms of the way he's reading the field.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to get those deep shots much more than the underneath throws. I think that speaks to the wild sack he had in the red zone after Jake Moody was out of the game, where he's just like scrambling around for 11 seconds.
Totally insane.
I think he's at a point where he's trying to do too much in the sense of extending plays and also pushing the ball downfield. Like, yeah, obviously it's great to push the ball downfield and have explosive plays. Like, we're not saying that that's ever a terrible thing, but like sometimes you do have to just take what's there and take what's easier. And sometimes, to your point, when you're waiting too long for a guy to get open deep downfield, you're missing a guy right in front of you, and then a blitzing safety comes and drills you, and then the game's over. So it's like not an evolution. It's not an evolution that I was expecting from Brock Purdy. I kind of thought, Like, I always thought he was better throwing deep than he got credit for last year because the numbers all backed it up. I think just because he's small and doesn't have like a rocket for an arm, people just assume that he's not a good deep ball thrower. He was a really good deep ball thrower last year.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to up the frequency quite a bit, and I'm sure Kyle Shanahan has something to do with that. But at a certain point, you kind of got to dial it back and just take what's there.
Yep.
The pendulum swung too far in the other direction.
Yep. Like Brock running around and extending plays and making plays, like that's great. But it cannot be the offense. Like that has to be like a break in case of emergency. It's 3rd and 3 and he's going to extend the play and see if he can make something happen. That can't happen on first down and then second down and then also third down. Like that's crazy.
It was when it happened in the playoffs, it was so refreshing because it was like, oh man, Brock Purdy can do this.
Yeah.
Brock Purdy can be this break in case of emergency running quarterback when you need it. And now it's like, that can't, you're exactly right. That cannot be the entire offense. Like to have the outside of structure stuff should be a bonus, not a feature.
Yes.
And because you have this structure that's so good, but it feels like they've gotten away from it.
Yeah, man. It's a weird thing for sure. I'm not 100% sure what to make of it, but I do know the 49ers do not look like a Super Bowl contender right now.
They don't. And I mean, I don't want to get back to the training camp stuff, but like this was fear, right? This was the fear when like you have holdouts and you have like an uneven training camp and this team's experienced. Yeah, this team's been together for a long time. And yeah, you want to keep Miles off them because they played, deep into the playoffs the last 3 years and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like having a good training camp and making sure everyone gets the work they need to get in is really important.
Mm-hmm.
Because then, not necessarily that like your team is going to be in rhythm coming into the season just because they participated in training camp.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to avoid bumps in the road. And when you're a team that, the only time the Niners have gone to the Super Bowl under Kyle Shanahan has been when they're the 1 seed.
Yep.
And they've been dominant. They've been the best team in the NFC early in the season in each of those years. That's why the training camp stuff is important. So,
yep. ELA Gaming Rays said that the 49ers lost a kicker and Shanahan panicked. I'm sorry. Shanahan doesn't get that out for me. Like he doesn't get the benefit of the doubt on that. They were bad in the red zone when Jake Moody was on the team and they smoked a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter against the Rams 2 weeks ago. This was not a Jake Moody centric thing. Did him being out have an adverse impact on the game? Like, yeah, no doubt. But Kyle Shanahan didn't panic because they didn't have a kicker. I just think that they're bad in these spots.
Semi-related. Do you kick the field goal instead of try 4th and 23? Even with Mitch Wishnowsky, do you kick the 45-yard field goal or do you try to convert 4th and 23? Or I think what Kyle Shanahan was doing was trying to pin Arizona deep.
Yeah, like arm punting, basically.
Which would make sense if the Niners defense could do anything in the second half.
Yeah, no, I think you try the arm punt thing that they did try. And if George Kittle makes that catch, he got walloped by the safety. That's a good play. But if he makes that catch, it nets the Niners like 20 additional yards or 18 additional yards or whatever it would have been. If you kick the field goal and miss, and did Robbie Gould or somebody miss a game? Jake Moody? No. Did somebody missed a game? They got like hurt pregame.
2021, Robbie Gould. I looked it up during today.
Okay, so and Wishnowsky
against the Seahawks.
Wishnowsky missed an extra point in that game, I think.
Yes.
Like I'm not lining that guy up to kick a 40-something yarder. Because then you're giving them 7 or 8 additional yards because it's from where the ball is spotted. I saw a bunch of people like, shouldn't he be able to? Yeah, he probably should, but also he doesn't practice that. Like field goal kicking is so much different than punting. So I think the arm punt idea was the right move. I might have tried a screen or something, though. When was the last time they threw a screen to a running back?
When they had Christian McCaffrey.
Right.
Did they throw any other screens aside from the one early on to Debo?
I don't think
second
so.
Drive?
I don't think so. Jordan Mason had one catch for 9 yards. I think it was on the last drive. And he just leaked out, got to the middle of the field, turned around and put his hands up, and Purdy got it to him for 9 yards. Like, what? Where's that 6 other times in the game? Like, I'm sorry, there's just no way that Jordan Mason is that incapable. Or maybe it's the offensive line Jordan Mason has to stay in and block. But there's just no way he's that inept at catching the goddamn football that he can't just do that little like leak out to the flat and catch, run ahead 5 yards, down. Is he going to be as good at it as Christian McCaffrey? No. But there's no way he's so dreadful at it that he gets one target in a game. I'm sorry, I refuse to believe that. Refuse.
Yeah, it's weird. Remember the Kyle Juszczyk wheel route that they would try, felt like 2 or 3 times a month?
Yeah, they hit one against the Jets.
There are just so many staple plays where you're like, and they can do it out at any formation and any personnel group, but it's like,
can we get Flo one time?
Didn't get Flo once.
Can we get one? That's the you play action, the outside zone, and then Kittle like leaks out the other side, or sometimes they've done it with like Marquise Goodwin in the past or whoever.
Trent Taylor.
Trent Taylor. And so they fake a run like to the right, pass catcher leaks out to the left, and then Purdy turns and throws it back to the left side after the defense is flowing the other way. Give it one time. It's just not that.
Was that the Kittle play? The Kittle
it
play
might have been. That was. I'm trying to
stumbled and was just short of the end zone.
It might have been. I'm trying to ball watch less. Pause.
Oh sure.
You
got your eyes on what the guards are doing.
Yeah.
When you read the guards, it'll dictate what the play is.
No, but legitimately on that play, I was watching Colton McKivitz. But it might have been. It definitely might have been that. I'll have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, I'll go back and watch too. Tom Brady announcing thoughts.
Ooh! Ooh! It was like somebody told him, Tom, you gotta be more excited. If you can inject some excitement into your calls, that would definitely help. We thought this was good. Here's a way you can improve. And one easy thing you can do is just inject some excitement into your calls. I think that's 100% the like tip he got, or the because they have coaches, all these networks that tell their talent what they should and shouldn't be doing. And that's what I think the critique was. And I think going, was his way of showing excitement.
Or like, be more like Tony Romo.
Yes. I genuinely think that was his response.
So I'm very much of the mind that like,
I thought
he was fine. I'm very much of the mind that maybe he evolves and becomes really good. He's not really good yet. I just Googled his contract with Fox just to make sure that I wasn't talking out of my neck.
Yeah. Say it. Say the number.
10 years, which is fine. 10
Say
years
the number.
Fine.
Say the number.
$375 million. Good for Tom Brady, man.
It's almost like Fox said, hey, we would like you to broadcast for us. And Tom said, no thanks. And they said, we will give you so much money. And Tom went, nah, I'll pass. And they said, okay, you tell us what contract it would take to get you to sign. And so Tom Brady came up with an insane number that they would never accept because he didn't actually want to broadcast. He said, how about 10 years and $375 million? He's like, there's no way. And they were like, bet, you're on. Would you like to take a year off first? Crazy.
He was a little too, like, I'm not expecting anyone to go on a broadcast and just like dump on like every player.
Mm-hmm.
Very generous with great player. The word great, like calling somebody great.
Yeah.
This guy's a great player. Like, is he? He's like, he's fine. He's okay.
Who on the Niners did he say that about today? And I was just like, it might have been Campbell. Whatever it was.
Yeah, there were
Doesn't
a
matter.
couple of those.
He doesn't have the cadence down yet. Like there's a flow to the game. And there were times like he was over talking, I think. And I don't know. I'm sure there's some balance between like not wanting to shit on guys, but also I think his nature is probably like this version of the game sucks. And it's like he'll find that medium. He'll be I think he's all right. He's
he'll get
5
there.
games in. I think he's in a good spot.
It's my advice to Tom Brady would be, and I'm not a broadcasting expert, disclaimer, but
As a person who watches the games, though,
don't say all the stuff that you're expected to say.
Yeah.
Like, you're Tom Brady, you have extremely unique insight because you're the best quarterback, most winning quarterback to ever play.
Mm-hmm.
Like, talk about your perspective on what you're watching. Don't say, oh, they're really trying to establish the run and be physical here.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it doesn't take $375 million to get that insight from somebody else.
Yeah, like what are you seeing the defense do?
Right.
What would you do as a quarterback? What did you like about that play? Honestly, if all he did was talk about the quarterbacks, I would be fine with the Tom Brady broadcast. Like, frankly, I don't give a damn what Tom Brady thinks about that defensive lineman's pass rush.
Or like if a quarterback misses a throw and Brady was like a maniac, right? Like a notorious maniac. If he threw in an anecdote, like I spent a week in April of the following offseason only working on that throw.
That's great.
Like, just toss that in there. That would be like, wow, that's amazing. You're Tom Brady. You're a legendary competitor. Like, that's so cool that you care so much about one throw that guy just missed.
It's so funny that you bring that up because he started to talk about training camp today. And Purdy, I missed a throw to Ayuk or something happened and Brady started talking about how like this is why training camp is important. And it was exactly what you were just saying where I was like, yes. Like, tell me how you did training camp. And then he just like cut the thought off.
Yeah.
It was just like training camp's important. Got to be there. Like, for what, Tom? What did you do there? Please tell me. This is what I would love to know.
Yeah. Or like, there's extreme heat. Did you inject yourself with pickle juice all week? Like, we know you did some weird shit. Like,
you notoriously sucked in Miami where it's very hot. Tell us about it.
Anyway, Tom's going to be just fine. I'm very optimistic about his long-term prognosis as a quality broadcaster. I think he's just
me too.
Being predictably a little easing into it, I guess, would be the way to say it.
Yeah, I think he's definitely in that stage still where, and everybody goes through this, right? When you first, I'm going to pull on my radio experience here. When you start doing radio or like broadcasting games, there's this tendency to just start imitating broadcasters.
Yeah.
And it's partly like that. That's part of it. Like Ken Korak, the A's broadcaster, was him and Bill King. Like when I was growing up, like that is why I wanted to get into media, was those two guys. Like they're incredible. And when I first started calling baseball games, everything I did was like a Ken Korak or Bill King type of call, or not. I was trying to imitate those guys. And it's like you can pull from their styles or like their phrases. You can like sprinkle those in, but you got to be you. You got to call the game how you talk and how you see. And same thing with on the radio. Like people think you got to get on the radio and immediately start talking like this. And it's like, nah, dude, just have a conversation. But it's so hard when you first turn a microphone on because you're like, I don't know what to do. I need to sound like a broadcaster, so let me change my voice and talk in this cadence. And it's weird. And it feels like that's where Tom Brady kind of is he's like, I know how this is supposed to sound. So I'm going to try and make it sound like that. And it's like, no, dude, just let it fly. If Tom Brady got on every broadcast and was just the biggest hater, do you know how many people would love that? And then when he did say something nice about somebody, he'd be like, oh, damn, dude, Tom Brady really liked what Jaden Daniels did today. I would love that.
Yeah.
Just say what you're thinking, Tom. Just be you, man.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? I think about it's like
Price.
How much?
Oh boy.
How many TV broadcasts did Tom Brady watch while he was in the league? You know what I mean? Like, I wonder that because he's like, film guy, right? Like, he's probably a big time football hardo who's not watching game copy because, you ever talk to Kyle Shanahan about a game? Like if Kyle Shanahan has an afternoon game and then the next opponent is playing in like the Sunday night game or the Monday night game, and you ask him like, oh, are you going to watch the game? He's like, nah. And you'd think like, oh, you're going to watch the opponent you're playing. And he's like, no, I'm just going to wait for the all 22.
Yeah. Cause you can't glean anything from the TV copy. Yeah.
Right. Was Tom Brady like that? And did he just go like 26 years or however long he was in the league, just avoiding broadcasts?
I think, I would imagine he watched games that like mattered.
Like would casually like watch a playoff game or something.
Yeah, although he's probably the kind of sicko where if he wasn't in it, he wasn't watching it. But I mean, like if they needed the Jets to lose, and they had if they were playing on Monday night and the Jets are playing Sunday, maybe he watches the Jets and keeps an eye on that. But to answer your question, I would put the over under at like full games he watched start to finish TV copy of in his pro career at like 5. And with that in mind, if he's watching a game, my guess is he's watching it for some specific reason that didn't involve like paying attention to the broadcast.
Yeah.
That would be my guess. I'd love to ask him.
Fair.
If I ever see him, yeah, let me do that. Let me just hit up Fox. Fox, we have one question for Tom Brady. Can we get 2 minutes of his time? We'd just like to know how much football he watched while he played football. One time, this is unrelated to anything. One time I got to interview Matt Light, not to brag, longtime offensive tackle for the Patriots during kind of the height of their glory years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to interview him, and I was working at the mall at the time, and so I was like interviewing like him from my car in the mall parking lot, like writing on the back of napkins, or not napkins, but like receipts that were just in my car, like taking notes. And I basically opened with some just really easy question about like when did you start watching football, or something about his relationship with football. And he goes, well, the first time I ever watched an NFL game, I was playing in it. And I was like, okay, first of all, sick lead. Great. Got it down. Second of all, what? And I think there's probably just a lot of dudes who just don't rock with football like that. Like, they love it insofar as it can make them millions of dollars, but they're not going to spend their downtime watching more football.
You remember, like, Pat Willis, after he retired, like, just didn't watch any football for, like, a couple years.
Yeah. You remember the first time we had him on, we were like, hey, does he know what's going on?
Yeah.
Turns out he does.
Yeah, man. It's unique. Not everyone is as reliant on football Sundays as we are.
Yeah, which is fair. I get it. It's like after doing a sports talk radio show all day, I get in the car and I listen to literally anything besides sports on my way home. You just got to get away sometimes. Bro,
there was a point, like, I have if you watch on YouTube, there's a big Lego Boba Fett ship And I did that because like I would spend so much time reading and writing and like looking at screens and stuff. I was like, I need to do something that has no words and no electronics.
Smart.
And I was like, oh, Legos. Yes.
Hell yeah.
So
Love Lego. It's actually called Lego, not Legos. Just anyways.
but yeah.
I think that's all I got. That's all I got for now.
And on that note, yeah. I'm gonna say it right now though.
Uh-oh.
And maybe I'm gonna look really, really dumb.
It's okay.
I think the 49ers are beating the Seahawks on Thursday.
Wouldn't surprise me. Like in the NFL, desperation matters, right?
Yeah.
Like that, and I mean, ideally, you'd get a kind of full-blown desperate version of the 49ers, and maybe we'll see that. Maybe they go to 3-3, and maybe they, I don't know, go on a run.
We'll see.
We sure will.
We will talk to you guys later in the week. Thanks for hanging out with us on YouTube.
Yeah.
Subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please hit the notification bell. Please like this video. Please comment on it. All good for the channel. Follow us on X, formerly Twitter, at Candlecron.
Yeah.
No stick, no wickles. And we will talk to you guys later. Oh, we have a Cooperage event on Saturday. Less than a week.
Yeah.
Live in Santa Rosa. We're doing a show, 8 p.m. We will talk about the game on Thursday.
We really need the Niners to win.
Yeah, we don't need a bunch of angry Niners
Bro,
fans.
Going out to Coop to talk about this
deep.
dog shit 2-4 football team.
We will be raffling off some cool items for charity. We got a George Kittle signed football. We have 2 George Kittle signed game-worn gloves.
Oh, they're game-worn?
Yeah, they're game-worn signed gloves.
Bruh.
George Kittle hooked it up when I went to practice on Thursday.
They're from the Patriots game because they're definitely from a win.
Yeah, they're so I'm not. We'll see. I'm not sure. I'd have to go back and look. We got a pair of Tabor Pepper signed cleats. So you won't get the pair. Each cleat is signed, so you'll get one because we're trying to maximize as many. We trying to have as many winners as possible.
Yeah, we're maximizing.
But maybe if you buy enough tickets, you can get both, and then you can get the pair.
Hell yeah.
So Bryce asked Damien signed shoes. Is that a prize? Damien D'Lo want to offer up some Dior Jordans. Throw his John Hancock on those and raffle them off.
I'll ask him.
Okay.
Damien, what's the nicest pair of shoes you're willing to give away?
All right, come to Cooperage in Santa Rosa Saturday night, 8 p.m. Hopefully we'll be celebrating an Ohio State Buckeyes win over the Oregon Ducks, and we'll have a good time.
Do we have a time for kickoff on that game yet?
4 p.m.
Oh, dude, perfect.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
So it might not even be over. Anyway, we'll figure that out. We'll talk about that offline. But,
yeah, we will. Goodbye, everybody.
All right. See you guys.